From the quiet space where your breath slows and your heart begins to listen, a divine whisper rises not as noise but as knowing, reminding you that you were never created to live small, unseen, or unloved. For before time learned how to count days, your soul was already known by heaven. And this knowing is not judgment but affection, not demand but invitation, because the divine does not approach you as a ruler seeking obedience but as a presence seeking relationship, saying softly that you are not an accident of circumstance but a deliberate expression of eternal intention. And even when your path felt broken or delayed, it was still held within a larger design unfolding beyond your immediate sight. For what you call waiting was often preparation, and what you call loss was sometimes redirection. And the divine message flowing toward you now asks you to release the belief that you must earn worth through exhaustion or prove value through suffering. Because love that must be earned is not love, but transaction. And heaven operates by grace rather than barter, meaning you are invited to rest from striving and begin living from alignment. Understanding that peace is not the absence of challenge but the presence of trust. And trust grows when you remember that you are carried even when you cannot see the hands beneath you. For the divine has been present in your resilience, speaking through every moment you thought would break you but did not, shaping strength quietly within your endurance. And now the message expands, calling you to awaken from survival into purpose, to move from merely existing into consciously becoming. Because your life is not meant to echo fear but to transmit light in a way only you can. And the divine asks you to notice how often guidance came disguised as discomfort, how growth arrived wearing the mask of uncertainty, and how transformation rarely announced itself politely. Yet through it all you were not abandoned. You were being refined, and this refining was never punishment but preparation. Because what you are becoming requires depth, compassion, and clarity that shallow comfort could never provide. And so the divine invites you to forgive yourself for not knowing sooner what you know now, to release shame for choices made while still learning how to listen, because guilt anchors you to the past while grace opens the future. And you are being called forward, not backward, into a life where your thoughts are gentler, your words are truer, and your presence becomes healing without effort. For when alignment replaces anxiety, your very being becomes a message, and the divine speaks through you not only in moments of prayer, but in moments of kindness, patience, and courage, reminding you that miracles are not always sudden events but often slow inner shifts that change how you see, choose, and love. And as this divine message continues to unfold, it asks you to let go of the need to control outcomes and instead cultivate faithfulness to the next right step. Because clarity does not come from knowing the entire path but from trusting the direction. And direction is revealed through intuition, integrity, and inner peace rather than external approval. For the divine does not shout over the noise of the world but waits in the quiet you often avoid. And in that quiet you will hear reassurance that you are guided, protected, and never late to your own becoming. And the message deepens, telling you that your sensitivity is not weakness, your compassion is not naivety, and your desire for meaning is not impractical. They are signals of a soul that remembers more than the mind can explain. And as you honor these signals, you begin to live from authenticity rather than expectation. And this authenticity liberates not only you, but those who encounter you, because truth resonates without defense. And the divine asks you now to choose presence over perfection, progress over pressure, and love over fear. Because fear fragments while love integrates, and everything you seek externally is already being cultivated internally. And when the timing aligns, what has been growing invisibly will emerge visibly. And the message concludes for this moment with a gentle reminder that you are not alone in your questions, your healing, or your hope. Because the same divine presence that set the stars in motion is attentive to the movements of your heart, guiding you not toward a life free of difficulty, but toward a life rich with meaning, resilience, and sacred connection. Connection continues to deepen as the inner awareness begins to recognize that nothing in your life has been random. Even the moments you labeled as mistakes were lessons wrapped in experience, shaping discernment quietly beneath the surface. And the divine message flowing through this realization invites you to stop measuring your worth through comparison. Because comparison fragments the soul, while truth restores it. And your truth has never required permission to exist. It only required your courage to accept it. For the divine did not create replicas but originals, each carrying a specific frequency meant to awaken something unique in the world. And when you suppress that frequency to fit expectations, you dim a light that was meant to guide, not only for yourself, but for others who are still searching for permission to be real. And so the message urges you to return to authenticity, to remember who you were before fear taught you to shrink, before disappointment convinced you to armor your heart. Because beneath every defense you built, there is still tenderness intact, still hope breathing quietly, waiting to be trusted again. And the divine does not rush this reopening, but patiently stands at the door of your readiness, knocking gently through moments of clarity, synchronicity, and unexpected peace, reminding you that healing is not linear, and growth is not loud. Often the most profound transformations occur invisibly, like roots deepening before branches rise. And during these unseen seasons, you are not stagnant. You are stabilizing, preparing to hold what is coming without breaking. And the message continues by asking you to reconsider your relationship with struggle, not as an enemy to defeat, but as a teacher revealing where alignment is missing. Because resistance often points to areas where truth is waiting to be acknowledged. And once acknowledged, resistance dissolves into understanding, and understanding into wisdom, and wisdom into compassion, not only for others but finally for yourself. And the divine emphasizes that self-compassion is not indulgence but responsibility, because how you treat yourself sets the standard for how you allow the world to treat you. And when you begin to honor your own boundaries, you teach others how to honor them as well, creating spaces of respect where love can breathe freely. And the message gently dismantles the illusion that rest is weakness, explaining that rest is integration, the sacred pause where lessons settle and clarity crystallizes. And without rest, even purpose becomes performance, draining rather than fulfilling. So you are invited to slow down, not because you are behind, but because your soul moves at a pace the ego cannot rush. And as you align with this rhythm, you notice guidance arriving more effortlessly, intuition sharpening without force, decisions feeling cleaner, lighter, truer. And the divine reminds you that intuition is not mystical fantasy but accumulated wisdom, speaking softly, asking only that you listen without immediately doubting, because doubt is often inherited noise rather than inner truth. And as you practice listening, you begin to sense when something expands you and when it contracts you, and this sensation becomes your compass, steering you toward what nourishes rather than what merely distracts. And the message unfolds further, revealing that your life purpose is not a single dramatic moment, but a continuous way of being, expressed through how you speak, choose, forgive, and show up when it would be easier to withdraw. And purpose does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels ordinary, like consistency, integrity, or quiet courage. Yet these are the forces that reshape worlds from the inside out. And the divine affirms that you do not need to save everyone or fix everything. You only need to be faithful to what you are called to hold. Because overextension leads to depletion, and depletion distorts intention, and you were never meant to pour from an empty vessel. So you are encouraged to receive as willingly as you give, to allow support without guilt, knowing that interdependence is not failure but design. For creation itself is relational, nothing exists in isolation. And the message now speaks to your fears of the future, acknowledging them without judgment, reminding you that fear often arises when imagination outruns trust, projecting scenarios that steal presence from the only moment where life actually happens. And so the divine calls you back into now, into breath, into awareness, into gratitude for what is already sustaining you. Because gratitude grounds the mind and softens anxiety, making space for faith to re-enter. And faith here is not blind belief but conscious openness to possibility beyond past evidence. And as you practice this openness, you notice resilience strengthening, hope stabilizing, and courage becoming less reactive and more steady. And the message continues, emphasizing that your voice matters even when it becoming unfolds quietly as awareness settles into the body and the mind learns to release urgency. And in this softer state, the divine message clarifies that your journey has never been about perfection, but about presence, about choosing honesty over performance and alignment over approval. Because approval fades while alignment endures. And when you align your inner values with your outer actions, life begins to feel less like resistance and more like coherence. And this coherence does not eliminate difficulty, but transforms your relationship with it, allowing challenge to sharpen rather than shatter you. and the divine gently reframes failure as feedback, explaining that every attempt refines discernment and every pause recalibrates direction, and there is no shame in recalibration, only wisdom, because wisdom listens when life whispers before it needs to shout, and you are learning to listen now, to notice the subtle cues of fatigue, excitement, contraction, and expansion, understanding that these signals are guidance encoded within your nervous system, not obstacles to override. And the message continues to emphasize that self-trust is cultivated through consistency, through keeping small promises to yourself, through honoring your own needs without justification. Because when you learn to stand by yourself, you stop seeking validation as a substitute for worth. And worth was never negotiable to begin with. It was inherent, present before achievement, and independent of outcome. And the divine asks you to disentangle your identity from productivity, reminding you that being is not measured by output, and rest is not a reward, but a requirement for clarity. And clarity is essential for ethical power, because power without clarity becomes control, while power with clarity becomes service, and you are being invited into service not as self-erasure but as self-expression, offering what is natural to you rather than forcing what is expected. And this offering may look simple on the surface but carries depth because authenticity resonates beyond explanation. And the message highlights that boundaries are not barriers to love, but structures that protect it, allowing intimacy without depletion, generosity without resentment, and commitment without loss of self. And as you practice boundary setting, you may feel discomfort, not because you are wrong, but because you are changing patterns that once kept you safe but no longer serve your growth. And change often feels unsafe to the part of you that learned survival early, so compassion for that part is essential. Acknowledging its efforts while guiding it toward healthier strategies, and the divine reassures you that you do not need to erase your past to move forward. You only need to integrate it, extracting meaning without reliving pain. Because integration transforms memory into wisdom, and wisdom stabilizes the future. And as you integrate, you may notice a softening toward others, a reduction in judgment, because understanding your own complexity increases patience for the complexity of others. And this patience is not passivity, but discernment, allowing you to choose engagement thoughtfully rather than reactively. And the message now turns toward your creative capacity, affirming that creation is a spiritual act, whether expressed through art, problem-solving, caregiving, leadership, or quiet consistency. And creativity thrives when fear loosens its grip. So you are encouraged to create without demanding immediate results, to explore without attachment, trusting that playfulness restores flow, and flow reconnects you to the timeless state where effort feels lighter, and ideas arrive with ease. And the divine notes that intuition strengthens when you stop outsourcing decisions to noise, when you reduce input and increase reflection, because wisdom requires space, and space is created by saying no with clarity and yes with intention. And as you cultivate intention, your choices align more naturally with your values, reducing inner conflict, and reduced conflict frees energy previously consumed by self-doubt, allowing that energy to support focus, compassion, and courage. And the message speaks to courage not as the absence of fear, but as the willingness to act with integrity while fear is present, choosing truth even when it costs comfort, because comfort without integrity eventually erodes peace, while integrity builds a stable inner foundation. And from this foundation you engage the world with resilience rather than reactivity. And the divine affirms that your influence extends beyond visibility, that your calm can regulate a room, your listening can disarm tension, your consistency can restore trust. And these quiet impacts are not minor. They are essential, and as the message continues, it addresses your relationship with time, encouraging you to release urgency as a default setting, understanding that urgency narrows perception while patience expands it, and expanded perception reveals options previously unseen, making solutions feel more accessible. And patience does not mean delay without action. It means action rooted in clarity rather than pressure, and clarity emerges when you align breath, body, and attention, grounding yourself before deciding. And the divine reminds you that embodiment matters, that wisdom is not only thought but felt sense, guiding you toward nourishment, movement, and environments that support regulation, because a regulated body supports an open heart, and an open heart supports ethical choice, and ethical choice sustains long-term fulfillment. And the message gently closes this segment by reaffirming companionship on the path, that guidance is ongoing, responsive, and intimate, meeting you where you are without demand, inviting you forward without force, and as long as you remain willing to return to awareness when you drift, to kindness when you harden, and to truth when you fear, the unfolding will continue, step by step, breath by breath, becoming less about arriving somewhere else and more about inhabiting your life with depth, coherence, and quiet joy. Within that quiet continuity of becoming, the awareness expands into a deeper recognition that life is not asking you to rush toward certainty, but to remain available to truth as it reveals itself layer by layer. And the divine message flowing through this openness reminds you that clarity is seasonal, arriving when the inner climate is ready, not when impatience demands it. And so you are invited to trust timing without surrendering intention, to move forward with sincerity rather than strain, because sincerity keeps the heart aligned even when outcomes remain unknown. And the divine speaks gently about identity, explaining that you are not the roles you perform nor the stories you repeat, but the consciousness observing them, capable of revision, growth, and renewal. And this realization frees you from rigid self-definition, allowing evolution without betrayal of essence, because essence is flexible like water yet constant in nature, adapting form without losing substance. And as you begin to live from essence rather than expectation, you notice decisions becoming simpler, not easier, but clearer, guided by resonance rather than reward. And resonance carries a feeling of rightness that does not require applause. And the message emphasizes that many of your struggles were attempts to live out of alignment with your truth. And once alignment is restored, struggle transforms into effort with meaning, effort that strengthens rather than depletes. And the divine reassures you that effort aligned with purpose replenishes energy even as it consumes it, creating a sustainable rhythm where giving and receiving remain balanced. And balance here is not static, but dynamic, adjusting moment to moment through attention and care. And the message continues by inviting you to examine your relationship with control, not to abandon responsibility, but to release attachment to specific outcomes, because attachment narrows vision and amplifies disappointment, while responsibility paired with openness expands possibility. And the divine clarifies that surrender is not resignation, but cooperation with a larger intelligence that sees beyond immediate preference. And as you cooperate, you begin to sense support arriving through unexpected channels, conversations aligning, opportunities emerging, inner resistance softening. And these are not coincidences but confirmations of alignment. And the message speaks to patience as an active practice, requiring presence, curiosity, and restraint, allowing situations to unfold without premature interference. And patience strengthens trust not because waiting is pleasant, but because it proves that meaning does not collapse in the absence of immediate answers. And through this practice you develop emotional maturity, the capacity to hold ambiguity without anxiety, and this capacity becomes a source of stability for yourself and others. And the divine highlights that emotional maturity is spiritual maturity expressed practically, guiding how you respond under pressure, how you communicate boundaries, and how you repair rather than retreat after misunderstanding. And repair is emphasized as sacred work, because relationships grow not through perfection, but through honest restoration. And the message gently challenges the belief that strength requires detachment, explaining that true strength allows closeness without collapse, vulnerability without loss of self, and discernment without cynicism. And as you embody this balanced strength, you notice a soft authority emerging, one rooted in integrity rather than dominance. And this authority influences quietly, creating safety rather than fear. And the divine acknowledges the grief you carry for versions of yourself you outgrew, dreams that changed shape, paths not taken, honoring that grief without letting it define your